Welcome to a review of Glass. Glass. First name Mr. Last name Glass. That's an actual line from the movie, by the way. So, if that doesn't set the tone, then I don't think anything does. First name Mr. Last name bad movie. It actually wasn't that bad. I'd say I liked it better than Split because I was at least, engaged the whole time. Split was, split, pun absolutely intended, between one storyline that I liked with James McAvoy. I struggle with because I don't know how to say the actor's name. Kevin Wendell Crumb, the character, the multiple personalities dude, and, him keeping everybody captured, the more standard, horror movie-ish element. And then there's it's split between that and the subplot about Kevin Wendell Crumb and his therapist. I don't remember the character's name. And that storyline just irritated me. If you want my full thoughts on that, go to my Split. I made a Split review as well, I'm pretty sure. But basically, I just didn't like that part of the movie. I thought that part was boring. I thought the psychiatrist character was an idiot. And I thought that part was where Shyamalan's pretentiousness really shows through. M. Night Shyamalan. Glass. Whereas Glass, I was consistently engaged the whole time. It's actually hard to talk about what I don't like about Glass without spoiling the movie. Essentially, I'm just gonna say, there's a big Shyamalan twisty twist at the end, and it's very strange. Some might like it, some might like the twist. I wasn't sure how I felt about it upon exiting the movie, but after, a week or two of, when did I think it was only a week ago. I don't know. After thinking about it for some time, I've decided I did not like the twist, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But first, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, I'll talk other things. So basically, the premise is, if you've seen Split, it ends with a surprise appearance of the main character of Unbreakable, which is was M. Night Shyamalan's first big movie, or one of his first. I haven't seen that movie. I was gonna maybe watch it before I saw Glass, but I never did. So I was being introduced to his character for the first time, and it's interesting because the movie, when it starts out, it's focused on his character. You see him, and he's working with his son, and he's trying to hunt down the Beast, Kevin Wendell Crumb's monster character, because he's kidnapping more people and beasting out more. And so it basically, but then everything kind of grinds to a halt after the first, I'd say the first 15 minutes or so is him hunting down the Beast, but then they all get but then him and the Beast essentially get caught mid-fight and put into a psychiatry ward or whatever. And you see, if you've seen the trailers, you'll know it's with this vaguely creepy psychiatrist woman who's I specialize in people with a very particular delusion of grandeur. The delusion that they are superheroes. And from there, it's a pretty slow-moving movie, but it's kind of an interesting slow-moving movie. It's certainly a take on superheroes that I've never seen before, and I like that. I mean, Unbreakable does the same kind of thing, from what I've heard. Probably does it better. Unbreakable's probably a better movie than Glass. I don't know, I haven't seen it, but just from, the sound of it, it sounds like Unbreakable's the best of this trilogy-ish. It's essentially a trilogy, because you have Unbreakable and you have Split, and this movie, Glass, brings them together. With Mr. Glass, the villain from Unbreakable, as the ultimate sort of, schemer. And his thing is that he has these brittle bones, hence the glass. He's Mr. Glass. First name Mr., last name Glass. And it's Samuel L. Jackson. And he's in there because he thinks he has superpowers, and he thinks they all have superpowers. and he believes his superpower is like hyper intelligence, and the psychiatrist is basically trying to convince all three of them, no, you don't actually have superpowers. You're it's all in your head. You're all like kind of crazy. They're they're scientific explanations for everything that's happened to you, and it almost works on like, well, I don't know if it almost works on David Dunn, because the weird thing about David Dunn, the main character of Unbreakable, is after he gets captured and put into the psychiatry ward, he has like maybe 20 lines in the whole rest of the movie. So if you wanted to see like his character grow and evolve, and that's what you liked about Unbreakable, and that's why you're seeing Glass, don't let the first 20 minutes of the movie fool you, because at a certain point he just like stops being an important character. It's kind of weird. Whereas like pretty much as soon as ironically, and this is a flaw of the movie, as soon as Mr. Glass is introduced onto the scene, because he's already in the psychiatry ward, as soon as he's introduced as like the mastermind schemer, David Dunn's character gets like sidelined. It's just Mr. Glass working with the split personalities guy to try and like prove that superheroes are real, basically. That's a brief outline summary of the plot, and it's really hard to talk about the movie. If that's spoilers, I'm sorry, but it's very hard to talk about the movie without, briefly giving a sort of plot, and for most of it, I was intrigued. I was into it. It is kind of lame that David Dunn's character just doesn't get a lot of development or even like screen time after a certain point. But other than that, James McAvoy was the best part of Split, and he's still really, really good in this movie. Watching him switch between all the different personalities is fun. Samuel L. Jackson is good. Just be prepared for him to really dramatically say, first name Mr., last name Glass, at one point. And he says it, because it's Samuel L. Jackson, he says it with enough gravitas that I didn't, start laughing in the theater, but it's definitely a stupid line. And there's a lot of, Shyamalan's not necessarily the best writer. He's either a little too wordy or a little too simple, I feel like. And there's some weird, wordy dialogue. There's also characters that, don't really need to be there. I feel like David Dunn's son didn't add anything to the plot, and Anya Taylor-Joy's character, that's the girl from Split who got kidnapped and then managed to escape and sort of, I guess, kind of made friends with Kevin Windlecrumb. She shows up, a lot, a surprising amount. I feel like she has more lines after a certain point. By the time Mr. Glass is introduced, she has more lines and screen presence than David Dunn does, I think. Which really makes it feel more like a Split sequel, but with a new villain. A new mastermind villain. I don't know. I don't know, it's a weird movie, but, there's some interesting, camera work. It's not really your typical superhero movie. It differentiates itself very quickly, and I think that's the idea. And I like the ambition of that idea that M. Night Shyamalan was going for. Hey, here's a superhero movie. Here's the Avengers of my superhero universe. But just like all the other movies before it, it's my own twist. It's my own take. Instead of them having a big battle, it's them trying to be proven that they aren't superheroes. I don't know. And seeing Mr. Glass, scheme and plot is interesting. There's a lot of interesting, camera angles. There's also camera shots that linger for way too long. There's a lot of shots where it's there's one in particular where basically a character says something that reveals something obvious, and then they cut to footage that reveals that twist, but you already know that twist is coming. It's really hard to describe without spoiling, but basically it pans over and you already know this twist is coming, but the panning shot is 10 years long. Although, I think that shot may be from the original Unbreakable, so that might not actually be the best example, but I don't know. The psychiatrist character is weird too. she gives off this creepy vibe, and it's definitely intentional, but, like, I feel like the way she was directed, her acting just comes across as really, like, flat. And it doesn't feel like a thing with the actor. It feels like she was directed to act this specific way to give off this vibe, but instead she just kind of, like, becomes tiring to listen to after a while. It's like, oh, okay, I don't like you. I say it's not a climactic showdown, but there is a climactic showdown. It's just, I don't know, it's weird. It doesn't quite go the way you'd expect. And that kind of leads into the twist, which I think I'd talk about the twist now. There's not a lot for me to say that I haven't already said that falls outside of the realm of this twist. So if you don't want to know the twist, just skip to like the last minute or so, and I'll give my overall thoughts on whether you should see it. So the big twist is basically, so Mr. Glass orchestrates this thing where they're going to go to the tallest tower in the city that's opening, and the Beast and Kevin are going to fight. Or the Beast and David are going to fight. And so he breaks Kevin out. The psychiatrist lady shows up. He breaks David Dunn out. They square up for a battle in the parking lot of the psychiatry place. So I'm like, when are we going to the tall building? And just as this parking lot fight ends, and I think they're going to go to the building, Anya Taylor-Joy's character turns the split personality guy out of Beast form and into Kevin form, which is like the main dude. And then Kevin gets shot. And I'm like, oh, okay, so he's gonna, like, turn into the Beast and, like, not be shot anymore, right? Nope. He dies. Then David, who got thrown into a tank of water, which is his weakness, dies. He gets drowned in a mud puddle. And then Mr. Glass also, I mean, he dies just by getting, like, punched by the Beast a couple times and knocked out of his wheelchair. Because he's brittle. He's first name Mr., last name Glass. And then, it's really weird. Basically, the psychiatrist lady has them all killed because she's part of a secret society that doesn't want the world to know that superheroes exist. So out the window goes all of the, are they super, are they not stuff, which was already never really in question, because when you see the Beast do things like crawl around on the roof, it's pretty obvious that he at least has powers, if not any of the other characters. But that's all thrown out the window. And she's a part of this secret society, and she was trying to convince them they didn't have powers, so she didn't have to kill them? I don't know, it's kind of unclear. And she goes over to Mr. Glass, and he's dying, and she's like, take comfort in the fact that your theory was right all along. And he's like, yeah, I did it! And then he dies. So all the heroes that they set up for the trilogy die, which, on one level, I appreciate. It's sort of like a, hey, you know, superhero movies, the heroes never die. Well, here, all the heroes die. And I mean, it's like, and that's why I was like, I kind of liked that when I watched the movie. And then there's a sort of second twist, which I like a little bit better, where essentially Mr. Glass set that part of it all up, too. And he was actually, like, he was never planning the big showdown on top of the tower. He was always planning to have, basically, get the cameras that are monitoring this psych ward to capture all of the footage of the fight and then publicly release it online. And he sends the footage to, like, his mother, and his mother, basically there's one normal character for each superpowered character. There's Mr. Glass's mother, there's the girl from Split, and then there's David Dunn's son. And he sends the footage to all three of them, and they release it, and then the secret society's scheme is foiled. And that's a pretty satisfying, like, second twist. Because, you know, it's always satisfying to see, like, ooh, the mastermind. He knew about this part, so he planned on the next level. And that's fun. But, given some time to think about it, the twist kind of just drags down the whole movie. I get what M. Night Shyamalan was going for. He's like, okay, well, normal superhero movies, the hero wins, the hero saves the day. here I'm gonna basically completely ditch the third act, because it really does feel like the movie is 2 acts. Or like, I mean, it's technically a 3-act structure, I guess, because the first act is before they get put in the psych ward, second act is while they're in it, third act is the parking lot fight. But it feels like, it honestly feels like it's the way the movie is structured until the big twist. It feels like the psych ward part is just the first act, and then their big fight, and then the breakout is the second act, and the big fight at the tower is going to be the third. But he completely cuts out the third act final big fight, which on some level is kind of cool. I can appreciate going for like a bit of a twist of something different compared to like a normal superhero movie, but killing off all your major characters really unceremoniously that you built up over 3 movies just feels like kind of a disregard for the fans who enjoyed Unbreakable or Split or both, by just like, David Dunn drowns in a mud puddle. He literally gets his head dunked in a puddle and drowned by a nameless security guy. And it's like, it'd be one thing if the characters died in an interesting way, but they all just sort of die all of a sudden, and all for the sake of this dumb secret society twist that, when you really think about it, makes no sense. Like, if there's a secret society trying to keep the world from knowing they're superheroes, why would convincing people who are super that they aren't super help at all? Like, they still have their powers. At some point, something might happen that makes them, something they can't explain that makes them think, oh, I do have powers, and then what? Like, it's a weird plan that doesn't really ever quite make sense, and it's also the reason that the psychiatrist character is so, like, vaguely creepy and, like, just unpleasant to listen to, I'm sure, is because she's a villain. Like, when she turned, I looked over to my friend and I'm like, I knew there was something bad about that lady. But it's like, did you really have to make her acting bad to convey that? It just feels like M. Night Shyamalan couldn't convey that with writing, so he had to convey it with, like, bad direction. I don't know. I think a better director or writer might have been able to pull off the twist he was trying to send, but ultimately, upon thought, the twist just does not work. It doesn't flow well. It kind of betrays all the interest in the fans by, like, ditching all the characters people knew from the previous 2 movies to introduce this dumb psychiatrist lady running this secret society. It doesn't, like the second twist that he's outed all the superhero footage is, like, a somewhat satisfying ending, but it still feels like an icing on the top of, like it's just sort of a comb over. Like, you polish a turd, it's still a turd kind of thing. And despite the largely good quality of the movie for most of the first, I guess, 2 acts, the twist really does just kind of drag it down. It's like, oh, Shyamalan had to go all Shyamalan-y again. I don't know. I'm not really into his movies, and I don't think I'm ever going to be all that into his movie. I like Split. A lot of people say Split is better than Glass, but I just found it, like, more insufferable. I think the difference is the insufferable Shyamalan-y part of Split was there the whole way through in one subplot. In Glass, it's there for, like, the final act. But before that, it's a largely interesting movie. So I guess, in summary, 19 minutes, skip forward, hello, if you liked Unbreakable and Split, sure, I guess go see it, and you'd probably enjoy most of it, but just be warned that the twist at the end is very strange. You may like it, but you also may hate it, because it's very, like, it's designed to be unsatisfying, and, like, deliberately unsatisfying, but it's not quite well written enough to have that sort of deliberate unsatisfaction that makes some stories really good. I feel like you have to have kind of a sad ending to deliberately have an unsatisfying ending. It also has to be sad, and there's nothing really sad about this movie's ending. It's just kind of a what the fuck ending. which, I don't know, doesn't quite work for me. But maybe it works better for you. It certainly is an interesting take on the superhero genre. But, like, if you want to see something that's a unique, interesting take on the superhero genre, just go watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, not Glass. Arrivederci!